Everybody ready? Are we ready? Deanie, you ready? Okay. Everybody? Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the City Council on this 29th day of October 2014. Would you all please rise, and would Chief Andy Wong please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome. Before we go any further, I just want to, a couple items of business we need to take care of. The first is I'm excusing Councilmember Martin Moore from attending. He is was the executive assistant or legislative assistant to Representative Roger Freeman. And for folks watching and also for the audience, who may not already know, today we lost a real giant in the community, our friend, our former colleague, Representative Roger Freeman. He passed away today at St. Francis Hospital after his battle with cancer. And I'd like to start this meeting with a moment of silence, if we could just. All right. Thank you. So today, for the first time since I became mayor, we had to lower the flags at half-staff for one of our own, and I directed our personnel to lower the city flag, the United States flag, and the King County, the state of Washington flag. And also, we have, as you know, we've got a new flag for flagpole that we are going to have a big event on Veterans Day, and we've got a 60-foot flagpole on 320th. And after some consultation with my colleagues and with a suggestion we received, I have directed that we were going to wait to put a flag on that pole, but instead of waiting, we have put our flag on that pole prior to the Veterans Day event, and we're now flying that at half-mast in honor of Representative Freeman. It seems altogether fitting that would be the first time we fly a flag from that flagpole, and it'll fly for a week in honor of Representative Freeman. Before we go any further, Council, is there anything you'd like to? Anything? We'll have an opportunity. We're going to discuss. We'll have an opportunity, obviously, to remember Roger, but it's a sad day for Federal Way. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to our business. We are here. The purpose of tonight's meeting is the presentation of three presentations for our 2015-16 biennial budget department presentations. We have, first, we'll be hearing from our Municipal Court, Judge David Larson. Second, our Law Department, City Attorney Amy Jo Pearsall, and our Prosecutor Stephanie Arthur, and our Police Department, Police Chief Andy Wong. So, without any further ado, we've got Honorable Judge Dave Larson. Sir?
Thank you. And thank you, Council and Mr. Mayor and the other folks tonight for letting me go first. It's no coincidence that it's a 5-hour drive to Spokane, and I'm going to take some 5-hour energy, so hopefully it works all the way. But and I'll be able to leave right after this, and so it's much appreciated. I'll dive right into this. The budget report has all the accomplishments of the court. We don't need to go over those all. The only supplement is the award that I was honored to receive in September. This and programs and efficiencies, it's essentially what I did is the information on revenue was obtained from the reports given by the various courts, the administrative office of the courts on a monthly and annual basis. That's where the revenue was obtained. The budget amounts were obtained by looking at the city's web pages to look at their expenses. The amounts up there are obviously in millions, and Councilmember Selsky had a question in advance. That money for our court includes photo enforcement revenue. I don't believe Kirkland has photo enforcement, but even if you took the photo enforcement revenue out, it's about 3.2 million of regular revenue, which, if you look at that, it's about half of the expenses, half of the revenue, half of the expenses turn into revenue, or excuse me, half of the revenue turned into expenses. So if you divided these other courts' revenue in half, it would be about what would be distributed to that particular city. The courts are not in the business of revenue. The only reason that we're even talking about revenue is because by statute, we're required to collect it. And this is a great opportunity to explain the role of courts in our community. We're a check and balance on citations and charges made, and we're a neutral party in trying to decide those disputes. If somebody doesn't owe any money, they don't pay any. If somebody pays money, that's because they were found to have committed an infraction or some violation of law. So our emphasis is not on revenue. However, we are by statute required to collect that. Photo enforcement revenue is not included on our line item budget, even though the statute requires us to collect it. And each month we distribute the photo enforcement money back to the city, but it still does not show as a revenue item in our budget. And again, it doesn't matter because we're not in the revenue business. But the reason there's a reduction in revenue is we are part of this whole entire system, and the system, we are the end of the system in terms of how many people end up getting violations of the law. And if we're having a better, safer city, and there's going to be less violations. If we're not so much, we're going to have more violations, and we'll just process those. So in terms of any adjustments in revenue or that comes into the court, we're trying to be conservative for the next 2 years rather than blowing numbers out of proportion. We're trying to be conservative in terms of the revenue that may come in based upon some projections. Obviously it will change if there's more traffic infractions issued or more criminal violations charged, and that can change over time. So if there's any further questions on that, Councilman, thank you. But I think it just amazes me every day on how wonderfully run our court is, and I just happen to be at the end, the prow of the ship, but it's the ship that makes this thing run. It's the clerks, it's the court administrator Sue White who's here, it's Tiziana Morgan or Tiziana Giassi who makes the every day-to-day operations run, and Judge Robertson that make this ship run, and all the prosecutors and all the public defenders and everybody else that get this thing moving. And so we just have a lot to be proud of in Federal Way in terms of our court system. Key projects, and thank you again for allowing us to proceed with our case management system through New Dawn. We're having our first meeting next week to start that process, and it's going to be help our court be much more efficient. All our court, police, everybody be much more efficient. And last night at FedRAC, we had the approval of the X-ray machine and the security improvements. They're just about to start construction. There were a variety of issues with code issues and everything else in terms of making some changes. It became a lot more complicated to make some of the changes we wanted to make, and ultimately got that under control. And then developing community partnerships is a priority of ours and I won't go into the details of that, but it's something that over the next couple of years I'd like to see us for community service, for paying fines and for penalties and for punishments, to have that type of thing developed in the community. But are there any other questions for the court?
Council, any questions? No? Other than, instead of questions, I think we're all so thankful that you're there. You're doing a great job, and thank you very much for your service.
Well, again, I'm just having to be up here standing and talking, but the rest of them do all the work, and I'm just privileged to work with the folks I do. So thank you, including you folks. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor, and have a good flight.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Next, we're going to hear from the Law Department. Our City Attorney, Amy Jo Pearsall.
go. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. Tonight I'll be presenting the Law Department's 2015-16 proposed biennial budget. With me this evening is Stephanie Arthur, our Chief Prosecutor, if you have any specific questions with regard to our criminal division. Up here is our, what is this called? Thank you. Oh man, it's not a good start. Our org chart. And the reason why I wanted to show this to you tonight is to show all of that we do with actually quite a few people, a few number of people, but those people that we have on board here are the best of the best. Along with Stephanie, we have 3 city prosecutors that do an amazing job, some of the best prosecutors in the region. In addition, we have a domestic violence, currently a liaison that we're asking to be transferred to a advocate who, again, years of experience, top-notch folks, and all the people in our department, with the exception of one new prosecutor, have worked there for multiple years. So it's a really deep, rich group of people that work in this department. For the past biennium, we assisted staff with the city center redevelopment. That, of course, is a top priority not only for the city, but the law department as well. We've addressed the marijuana-related business requests, and we will continue to do that as that moratorium has been extended, and the questions will continue to arise until we've decided what we're going to do in the city with regard to those businesses. We negotiated and finalized 3 labor agreements. Some of those had been outstanding for some time, and I pride myself on our relationship with those different union groups, and I think we've developed some great relationships throughout the years. We've also worked on wireless site leases. Just in this past biennium, we had 3 renewals that will last multiple years moving forward. In addition, we've had several movements for electronic conversion. This has covered both Sector and Spillman workflow. That Sector and Spillman are programs that the police department use. Our conversion has helped to interact with those more efficiently. We've also, just within our own files, have moved towards electronic. And the basis for that is, as we move forward with the new DAWN system, we have to have all the groundwork set up so that we can work within those new systems efficiently. And if we still have a mix of paper and electronic, that's not going to go as smoothly. So the new DAWN technology is really the end game here, and so everything we've been doing up till now has been sort of working towards that. So now that we have Sector and Spillman workflows set, and once we have new DAWN set, all of those things should integrate and work together to have a very effective system. It will also help with our electronic discovery with the public defenders and have a smoother transition with that as well. A question was raised whether this is worth the time and effort and the money. And if you'd asked that when we first started, I don't know, the answer may not have been so positive, but at this point, now that we've worked through the vast majority of that, the answer definitely is yes. So, but there has definitely been a transition period, and that will probably occur again when we start with new DAWN. We were lucky enough to be able to send one of our paralegals to a training along with members of IT and police, the court, in order to start putting the groundwork in now so that when we get to that stage, we'll be ready for that transition. So it's definitely worth it. The other electronic conversion that we made is our Public Records Act online tracking. That's not only efficient internally, but it also now allows requesters to make requests online, which they were previously unable to do that. So that is not only useful for us, but it also is an additional service to the public that we were able to provide. On the criminal side, we've prosecuted 3,750 citations. These include, of course, driving under the influence, driving while license suspended, domestic violence, theft, and other misdemeanors. The other big thing in the civil side was the transition to self-insurance. This was huge for a couple of different reasons. One, just controlling the rate of our insurance costs every year, but also having control over our litigation. We have experienced that some cases that we preferred not to settle, we had lost some control over that, but with the move to self-insurance, we regained that control, and that's really important. In just the recent jury verdict that we had that was favorable, if insurance had had control of that case, they would have settled it long before we made it to the jury. For next biennium, we will continue our work at the city center. Again, that remains a top priority not only for the city but the law department. We will have 5 labor agreements up for renegotiation over the course of 15 and 16. We will continue to participate in regional work groups. Right now, the one that's having the most movement right now is the Puget Sound Emergency Radio Network. This is the 911 towers that we need for that, and it's a big movement regionally with regard to building a new system, who will be owning and controlling that new system, and so we'll be a part of those decisions, and we'll be bringing information to council about that transition and what role we're going to play in that. And additionally, the Domestic Violence Task Force is a group that we've played a role in throughout the years, and will continue to do that. And again, we will work to transition to the New Dawn electronic system for our court records. So in order to accomplish all these things, the mayor's proposing that we reclassify the deputy city attorney position to an assistant city attorney position. And that will allow us to accomplish 2 things. One, we can reclassify our domestic violence liaison to a domestic violence advocate and add a 0.5 FTE legal assistant to assist in some of the duties that the domestic violence liaison is currently doing. So now, if we transfer her position to an advocate position, she'll be out in the field more and doing more directly with victims of domestic violence, and will leave a slight gap in the administrative work that we currently do in the department. And this 0.5 legal assistant will be able to help backfill that gap. But that is an important role that we need to provide to the public. And then, as Aday explained on the first budget meeting, some of the budget items have been realigned to reflect the Prop 1 funding and also risk management costs. So some of the numbers show a fluctuation, and the reason why is because the money has been reallocated. So before, HR was considered part of the law department, and so now they are under the mayor's office, and so the money that was used for unemployment, insurance costs, and other L&I costs and those types of things, our L&I insurance, that has been transferred over under the mayor's office budget. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Council? Councilmember Honda.
Thank you for the presentation. The reclassifying the domestic violence liaison to an advocate, would that be enough? Or
Well, it depends. I mean, we haven't been in the advocate business for a while now, and so we actually don't have a very good measure of what the needs are for the community at this time. So the first step is definitely getting her back out in the field and seeing what the need is, and if it's determined that one is not sufficient, we'll obviously discuss that with the mayor. But
okay.
I can say, one of the first meetings I had when I became mayor is we sat down with the law department and Stephanie and I actually had this conversation. Spending probably about half of my 18 or 16 years at the King County Prosecutor's Office prosecuting DV cases, I couldn't even contemplate prosecuting those cases without advocates. And so, I would love to hear feedback. I think, hopefully from that question, I think what you should be hearing is, we're committed to making sure these cases have the resources that they need moving forward. And so if there's a greater need, let us know. All right. Councilmember Selsky.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Farrell, and thanks for answering the question
Sure.
about the electronic conversion. I was curious about that. And then I sent an email with another question. I may have received a return email, but I didn't have time to check that. It was regarding the revenue, and I heard Judge Larson say that the court is not really interested in the revenue side, although they have to, they have to raise revenue. Same thing for your department. There's charges for services, and it was 1.3 million for those services in 2013. Then it went really high to 1.5 million, and in 2014, and then 2015 it's 900, a little over 900,000. What are those services? And
that's directly related to the fact that HR was part of law during 2014, and so
Okay.
these internal departments, in the past, we've charged basically an internal service fee. So we do that still, and a day can pipe up if I'm answering this wrong, but we do that still for risk because each department utilizes the risk services, and HR also does it because each department utilizes HR services. So we, equally distribute sort of how much that internal service is costing across all the departments. And so when HR left, that extra revenue, quote unquote, that HR would have received went with them to the mayor's office. So it's more of a rearranging of how we're tracking these things, but the money itself isn't gone, it's just under different.
Got it. It's all just internal then. I was thinking you were charging for some kind of services like the court does for,
The only thing we really generate as far as revenue goes are the leases, the wireless leases, and that's actually through the Parks Department and goes to the general fund, so we don't see that in a line item for the law department.
Okay, great, thanks. Makes sense.
All right, Councilmember Sapadowski.
Yeah, you may have already answered this, but on your org chart, you have the risk management position. So it doesn't have staff because it's been transferred?
No, we actually do serve a risk function in the law department. Our
Okay.
lead paralegal, Tanya Proctor, is the main contact or the main person that works on risk. We don't have a per se risk manager, but we do serve a risk function in that she processes all the pothole claims, well, any claim really, but internally we handle all the smaller claims for potholes, missing property, it's so many different possible things. And then we decide at that level based on sometimes the larger claims for claims of unconstitutional actions or, the big ones, or use of force of that. We decide if we're gonna assign outside counsel and what we need to do. And so we have sort of 3 levels: completely internal, we have a third-party administrator, a TPA, that also handles some of the medium ones, if you will, and then if it's a major one, we will go to outside counsel. So we do that function internally in our department.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Council, any other questions? All right, great job.
Thank you.
Steffi can get back to watching those Giants.
I know.
Good luck.
I don't know, I have my phone for
All right. All right, Chief. Good job.
All right, good evening, Mayor Farrell, Deputy Mayor Burbidge, and members of the council. It's my pleasure to present to you the 2015-16 proposed biennial budget for the police department. First, I'd like to introduce members of our command staff. We're very fortunate to have a very experienced members of the management team. Each member that's seated here has been in police work for 20 or more years. And we have individuals that's been in police work for 32 and 34 years. Combined, all of us, 227 years of police experience. So I think we're very fortunate to have such a experienced staff. And I'll just start at the end here. This Steve Arbuthnot, if you can just, Commander Arbuthnot is our criminal investigations commander. And in January, he will be transferring to day shift patrol. And we have Commander Casey Jones. He's assigned a night shift. He's a night shift commander. Kathy Schrock is our civilian operations manager, and she is the highest ranking civilian employee within the police department. She oversees just about all of our civilian staff. Diane Shines is our records administrator. And then Lynette. No. Lynette Allen, she's our executive assistant to me and also to Deputy Chief Kyle Sumter. And on the far end, that's Commander Stan McCall. He's our professional standards commander, and he will remain in that position next year as well. And then Commander Chris Norman, he's our contract services commander, and he'll be going to criminal investigations section in January. And then we have Commander Steve Neal. He's our day shift commander, and he'll be taking over a contract services section. And then all of you, of course, you know Deputy Chief Kyle Sumter. The police department, we have 155 FTEs, and of the 155 FTEs, 126 are sworn personnel. Commanders and lieutenants oversee 19 work units or patrol squads within the police department that provides 24/7 coverage. In the office of the chief, there are 3 individuals assigned, myself, and then Deputy Chief Sumter and Lynette Allen. From the office of the chief perspective, I focus more on planning, organizing, budget, the administrative stuff, and then Deputy Chief Sumter focuses more on the operation, day-to-day. That's how we typically macroly divide the workload from our office. And of course, Lynette Allen, she basically tells us where to be and what to do, and we just do what she tells us to do. But there's 3 of us there. And then in the police department, there are 2 major divisions within the police department. So you have field operations and support services. Now, field operations is every sworn officer assigned to this side wears a uniform. So by far, this is the biggest division within the police department. So in this side, we have 3 commanders assigned, and then 11 lieutenants. Out of the 14 lieutenants that we have, 11 are assigned to field operations, and we have a total of 84 officers assigned to this division. So just to give you an idea, for emergency call, when it's an emergency, our average response time is between 3 to 4 minutes, and 13 minutes is our average time for all calls. So during peak times, non-priority calls, there's going to be some delay in response. But overall, I think our staff is providing exceptional service to our community. And it's large in part because of the leadership that we have here. Support services side, we have a total of 27 FTEs, but 23 are sworn. And this is an important section, a criminal investigation section, persons, property, special investigations unit. Each of those units have a lieutenant assigned, and they do a lot of felony follow-up investigation. And then administration, very important section, budgeting, training, recruitment, hiring, internal investigations, CLIA. There's a lot of work that gets done in the administrative section, and there we have a commander assigned to that section. And then what we do in the support service side, because based on workload, Kathy Schrock is a direct report to me. So we divide some of the support services work between Deputy Chief Sumter and Kathy Schrock. Okay, so some of our key accomplishments for 2013 and 14. I know you've seen this slide before, but one of our major accomplishments this past year is opening the substation. We've received a ton of compliments from citizens, a lot more police visibility, and we had a pretty tight schedule to get the substation open. It was to be open in April, and I want to compliment Commanders Norman and Jones and their staff, IT manager Thomas Fetchner and their staff, to put in the infrastructure. And what we decided to do was to put 2 work units at this substation. And it's augmented by patrol officers as well. So what we have is just a lot of patrol officers coming and going. Kind of the same concept that we don't have a lot of crime around City Hall because there's a lot of police coming and going, but we're kind of using that same model. So by having these 2 work units there in patrol, it's been a tremendous asset downtown. So it's been real good. The next big accomplishment would be really transitioning our patrol vehicles to black and white. Now, in the police department, we respond to 55,000 calls for service. So on average day, 150 calls for service. So where patrol cars are highly visible. Now, these are 911 calls that patrol officers are responding to, but doesn't even add the number of times our officer just may have contact with our citizens in the field. So by far, the police department is probably the most visible aspect within the police department, and by just changing the color of the car design, it's much more visible. Shows that we're progressive, and it's a very nice design. So I think that's a major accomplishment for the police department. The next is successful. So we successfully achieved the reaccreditation, CLIA reaccreditation, and this is something that we should be very proud of as a city. We're one of 7 police departments in the state of Washington that's CALIA accredited. Not too many police departments can say that, and it's by far the most difficult accreditation to attain. So a lot of departments say, hey, we're state accredited and so forth. Even state accredited agencies are fairly low number. So for us to get CALIA accredited, we're automatically state accredited. They're recognized to a point where we receive that. So our staff did a fantastic job, and in November we will be heading to New Mexico to receive our reaccreditation. And then second here is successfully migrating from UCR, Unified Crime Reporting, to NIBRS. And this is a major, major undertaking. With UCR, you measure 8 crimes, and it's hierarchy of crime. If you respond to a crime, you only document, or you can document as many crimes as you like, but you only count the most severe crime. Whereas NIBRS is measuring 26 different crimes. And the idea is that it does a lot more of an analytical work, so it helps police departments, also nationwide, not even police department, but other organizations that can glean the information and to see how we can combat whatever crime that may be. But it gives us a lot more information as police managers as to more details as to what do we need to do to counter. But I would tell you with NIBRS, it's a fairly new, and I would say we're probably far ahead of most agencies. We began implementing in 11 and 12, and there's still police agencies that have not transitioned to NIBRS. So our staff, I think, we're progressive, way ahead of the game. So I would tell you that it probably will take another 2 or 3 years for us to really see, because if we're working out the bugs as we go. We get new direction from WASPIC and others to work it out. So I want to share that with you. And then one of the things that I think we're doing that most agencies aren't doing is we've been doing online reporting by our citizens for some time. But we have actually went further now. We have loss prevention people from major retail centers like Walmart, Macy's, and other places that actually we have a protocol where if the individual doesn't have a warrant, they get screened, and the LPOs do the report for us. Then it gets screened by an officer and sent to the prosecutor's office for prosecution. The benefit of that is it means that more officers, patrol officers, are freed up to be on the street. So, but if the individual has a warrant or they're resisting or there are problems, our patrol officers are responding. Another thing with this cop logic, online reporting, whether it's citizen or loss prevention, it does drive up your shoplifting numbers, but the benefit of that is you will also identify more. LPOs are more willing to file reports when they don't have to sometimes wait for officers to respond. So we're doing that as well. And then I know Amy Jo talked about sector, but e-ticketing and collision. Bottom line is we're using barcode to issue tickets or do collision reports, and then we're printing things in the car. We have a in-car printer. So bottom line is it takes much less time for officers to complete collision reports, for example, and it frees them up to be on the street. So when we implemented this program in March, we saw a little dip in our infractions, but we're certainly seeing the numbers climb back up. So anytime you introduce new technology, sometimes it does slow things down a bit, but all criminal citations are done through sector. So that's a major accomplishment in the past 2 years for us. And then expansion of automatic license plate readers, ALPR. This is, again, one of the mayor initiatives. That we had one vehicle, but we wanted to have a greater impact, and so now we have 3 vehicles with ARPR technology. And one of the things we've done also to impact auto theft is work with Patrol, the Regional Auto Theft Task Force. And when we saw our numbers rather high, we did call in Patrol Auto Task Force to work with us. So Detective Cruzy and others did a fantastic job removing some prolific auto thief families from our community. And I think combination of both technology and that, I mean, our auto theft number the last few months been down to about 50%. So just removing some key individuals has had a huge impact for us in our community.
So you were talking, may I interrupt, Chief?
Yes, sir.
So the corresponding from last year, the numbers of car thefts in Federal Way has dropped by 50%, correspondingly in the
past few months. We've been averaging around 90, 100 auto thefts a month, and looking at statistics for the last few months, we're down to 50, 60. So I mean, we saw a dramatic reduction. So I'm liking the trend.
Me too.
But, yeah, it only takes a couple of prolific thieves to move back into town, it changes that number. But bottom line is we did call in patrol to work with us, work in this area along with our detectives, and I think those key arrests has made a dent.
Right, and conversely, actually, it only takes the arresting and incarceration of a couple of key auto thieves to drive those numbers way down. That's how Norm did it a few years ago at the King County Prosecutor's Office.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a number. Keep us posted on that in regard to when we get down toward the end of the year. That's something we really want to highlight with the public.
Sure.
All right, Chief,
Okay.
go ahead.
Next is another accomplishment. Beginning of the year, one of the things we want to do is make traffic safety a priority within our community. So with the Nick and Derek project, we focused on DUI and also distracted driving. So just give you some numbers, March 15th through October 26th period, during our emphasis, we made 29 additional DUI arrests and then 839 distracted driving tickets from the emphasis patrol. So we want to thank Mayor and Council for authorizing us to conduct additional patrols. It's always hard to measure and quantify, but we believe our streets are safer by removing those 29 DUIs and putting emphasis on distracted driving. And then implemented a new in-house electronic field reporting workflow system. So how it really works out in the field is a patrol officer now, it's paperless system, essentially. An officer will type a report from their MDC in their car. They'll electronically send it to their supervisor, to the supervisory queue. The supervisor reviews the report. If it needs correction, sends it back electronically. If it's acceptable, the supervisor electronically signs the report, sends it to records electronically. Records processes it, and then they do the distribution, either to the prosecutor's office, the court. So everything is done electronically. There's essentially very little paper work, that actual hard copy paper anymore. So again, Kathy and Diane, they're much smarter than I am. In leadership, they say surround yourself people that are smarter than you. Well, that's certainly the case because Kathy and Diane has done I think works for everybody, yeah. And then another thing.
Excuse me, Chief, could I
yes,
just,
ma'am.
may I ask a question just
Of
on
course,
that?
yeah.
I'm assuming that we have a fantastic backup system
Yes.
to the electronic everything?
It's like all of us, if there's years ago we used to work without a computer, MDC. And we just buy a radio call and you write it on a piece of paper and you go. And I mean, today, if you take that computer away from an op, they're out of commission, literally. But yes, they can get back in there and operate with the radio, and they can, get back doing paper if we had to. But I think there's redundancy with the system, and we haven't had a problem yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually, if there was probably a breakdown, you would be able to, probably either look at the officer's computer or maybe even sent email and track that down as well.
Okay, computer-aided dispatching system. We implemented a new system, and technology is constantly evolving. And what you get with a new system, new aided dispatch, really enhances officer safety. They can access a lot more information about people, how many times we've been to that particular residence if we get a call. If a license plate is ran, then the officer knows instantly that another jurisdiction ran that plate. And then just even mapping capability. If you go to a call, it gives you mapping capability. So officers now have a lot more information at their fingertips than they did with the old system. But that was a major undertaking that was implemented this year as well. And the last thing, we've had this program for a while, but shopping cart program. They recover thousands of shopping carts each year, roughly like 3,000, and return it to the retail store. And this is one of those programs where it's all run by volunteers. And when we initially came up with this idea, because there was a business that was doing it in town, it was going out of business, we thought, what are we going to do to address this issue? Because it was a constant problem within our community. And some people thought, you're absolutely crazy. You're going to do what? And we've been doing this now for about 4 years, and it's a model program. And I would tell you that if volunteer group ever dried up, this is one of those programs we probably need at least FTE to keep picking up the shopping carts. But right now it's working. We want to keep this group motivated and just support them because they're doing phenomenal work for our community.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Got a question about that. So this is something the change, the grocery store change, they don't pay for when we return carts, right?
Nothing.
Because I know these carts are worth up to a couple $100 each, and of great value to them. So, anyway, just a thought about another revenue stream here.
I'm not aware of any other jurisdiction that's doing exactly what we're doing. You know, we have a secondary vehicle that's, you know, that they're using. We purchase a trailer, and the volunteers do it all, and they even submit a monthly report, all by volunteers. So
That's a great service. Thank you.
I just want to commend the volunteers. I really do, because I tried to push one of those shopping carts that somebody left on a sidewalk above Fred Meyer back into Fred Meyer. That's hard. It really is. They're not light things. And so my hats are off to the volunteers. Thank you all so much for what you do, because you keep our community looking beautiful.
thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So do they go into apartment complexes?
They go anywhere. In fact, there's a number that you could call. We have a shopping cart recovery line that people can call. It's in our website. If you call it into the police department, we forward it to our volunteer, and twice a week they go out and pick them up. In fact, in their spare time, they've gone out to BPA Trail and with ATV pulling out shopping carts out of the wooded areas and so forth. So they'll go anywhere as long as you call them.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So for Mayor, Police Chief recommendations for our new program request, we are looking to add 5 FTE police officer positions. And of the 5 officer positions, 4 of the officers will be grant funded by COPS. They pay for 60% of an entry-level police applicant salary and benefit for a 3-year period. That's $500,000. And also the 5 officers that we'll be adding will all be signed to field operations. They'll either be signed to Special Operations Unit or our PROACT team to work hotspots, work on gun violence, other problem areas so it'll be more of a PROACT team. And these teams are critical to solving problems, whether it's a drug house, gang problem, have officers that their mission is to address those issues. And then so that's 4 officers for that, and then we're looking at the 5th officer having an evening traffic vehicle that can work DUI and take collisions in the evening and also work DUI. So augmenting our traffic enforcement efforts with so 4 to SOU PROACT and 1 to traffic is what we're looking at.
Councilmember Selsky.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So Andy, on the chart there, it says 5 new positions. And I
Yes.
noticed on the budget document, we're going from, in 2014, from 97 officer positions to 110.
Yes. So what that is we used to do transfer funds to pay for particular one-time funding. So we're moving to an ongoing funding. So if you look further down in that chart, you'll see police officers, 8 positions. So they were one-time funded at one point, but now they're ongoing. So if you add 8 to 97 plus 5 will give you 110.
Okay, that's good math, thank you. I didn't see that.
Chief, Councilmember Hunt has a question, and then Councilmember Maloney.
Okay, thank you. I have something that we've already covered, and then my question that I asked you earlier. For the officers who work at the Commons, do they have a workspace now? I know for a while that there was.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Well, there was during the remodeling that there was a problem with finding space to work.
Yes, right now they're in a space that they share with the security officers. The space is clearly inadequate. And one of the things we want to do is put an APHIS machine back there, but the current arrangement doesn't allow for that. But it's funny you would ask about, yesterday in fact, or the day before, I spoke with the vice president of the company, Randy Slaughter, and we've been working on building an office in the back, and he said the funding has been secured. Next 3 to 4 weeks they'll start construction so that we can put an APHIS machine. And what that does is that it puts allows those officers to stay at the mall instead of having to transfer to the station for processing. We require photograph fingerprint of all arrestees. So by having the machine there and the taking ability to take photos, the officers will be able to do it all there. If they need to be booked into jail, if the officer decision is to book, then a patrol officer will respond and actually do the transfer to score jail. So it is, we are a little bit out to start construction of a new office space for officers.
Are we paying for that construction, or is the,
No, they're gonna pay for it.
okay? A second question is school resource officers. We have those at the 5 high schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have them in the middle schools?
We do not. So the school district has security officers assigned to elementary and junior high. Now, they don't have security officers at every school, but we do work in cooperation with them to try to provide coverage. But each of the high schools, we do have a school resource officer.
And then my other question is something you're gonna be talking about in a second, is the new police vehicles,
Yes.
the 3, and I had asked him earlier today so that he wasn't caught off guard. My question is, could the purchase wait for a year, or is it necessary to purchase these vehicles this year?
I would tell you that it's necessary, and there's 2 reasons. And when we spoke earlier, I didn't give you an answer, but one, what we've done in the past is we purchase a vehicle for every 2 officers. And the reason we do that, when you do that, the longevity of the patrol cars is around 5 years. So we do a replacement, collect funds for replacement on a 5-year basis. But if you go with less vehicles and you're running a vehicle 3 shifts, 24/7, then typically other departments, the vehicle isn't gonna last more than 3 years. So by design, we sign certain number of a vehicle to 2 officer assignment, and that gives us the longevity. And the second part is by collective bargaining agreement, anytime an officer moves into the city or they live in the PAA, we have to furnish them a patrol vehicle. So when we started this program, when we did the agreement with the labor group, with the guild, we started off with like 5 vehicles, and then it grew to 8. Now we're up to 15. So what's happening is that when we hire these new officers, certain percentage of them, because not just because of the car, but they recognize that that's a benefit. So some officers are opting to live in the city. So we're having to increase the number of vehicles. If we don't have so much in the fleet, we won't have adequate vehicles. And plus, with the police vehicle, it isn't like any other vehicle. I mean, they're used for emergency driving, pursuit sometimes, and they're responding priority. And I can say this with confidence, the chief of staff, when he was chief, and myself, I want to make sure that our officers have safe cars when you're driving at high speeds. We don't want the wheel to come off the wagon at high speeds with bad results. So we have always kept our equipment pretty good for our officers.
So then, if they're purchased in 2015, then we start putting money aside for the reserve policy to replace them?
Yes.
So how much is that per car?
Fully equipped patrol vehicle, computer, everything, the wiring is about $55,000 today's money.
So how much do we put aside every year?
I would say just over $10,000 a year.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. Andy, I appreciate everything you're going through, and I know you've got more to go over. I just wanted to say I'm happy to hear that we'll be adding more officers. My question, though, is one of my questions is about that, and it's in regard to what Finance Director Aday, now I'm going to have to say his last name, Arawula, said a couple of weeks ago in regard to not using one-time funds to finance things on an ongoing basis. And so you said that 4 of those officers would be funded by a 3-year grant. So how does that match up?
Well, the total cost for these
Oh,
officers
60% of it
for
anyway,
3
yeah.
years is about $900,000.
Okay.
So salary and benefits. So the cops grant will pay for $500,000. So we have to come up with the $400,000. Now, when we get into the budget, we're taking traffic safety fund. We're also using so instead of one-time funding for these positions, what the finance director has done is to have Prop 1 funding, utility tax, and also traffic safety fund, and whatever that funding is allocated to the police department on an ongoing basis. So
Okay.
there isn't this transfer of funds that are going on. It's just a certain amount of money from those funds are being used for the police department budget.
And I think actually I think what we're saying is that this is grant funding as opposed
Right.
to a pot of money that we're using for, that we have on hand here for one-time funding.
Okay,
That kind of puts us out over a cliff.
okay,
That says, and that's actually had been the long-standing practice of, you know,
Okay.
funding certain positions just on cash on hand.
okay.
But
I see.
what happens is,
Okay.
and certain jurisdictions will do that, where they start slowly get out onto a cliff, and that's, if you don't have ongoing revenue. But yeah, this is grant funding,
Okay,
obviously.
all right, so that's the difference. Okay, thank you. And then, if you don't mind, I had a question earlier and I didn't ask it. On the NIBRS, the conversion over to NIBRS, and you said that a lot of the other municipalities hadn't really embraced it yet. And so I'm wondering, when reports are done out at the state level or whatever level they are about our crime rates versus their crime rates, how do they drive those up? And also, kind of playing into that, you mentioned a lot of initiatives that we've been working on that I think are great initiatives, but I'm wondering if they drive our numbers up too, like the Nick and Derek project and the automatic license plate readers and all of that stuff. So even though we're doing a really good job, does it make us look worse?
When WASPIC sends out an annual report, they're very clear on being very careful about trying to compare one jurisdiction's statistics to another. Because what type of programs, initiatives that you have within the police department it may be apples to oranges when you're comparing with another jurisdiction. For example, I was sharing with you about our CopLogic or online reporting. Now, we have pretty good staffing in Federal Way PD. When our citizens call 911, we know we're going to show up. There's certain expectations within our community. But when you go to other communities, there just isn't as many officers, or they're not accessible. So citizens get conditioned not to call in the police because they're not going to show up, or they're going to tell you to mail in a report or something like that. So not being accessible, whether online or by officers, yeah, you can drive your crime numbers down. So I think the important thing is, what's the true crime that's happening in your community, and you work towards reducing that, because that's what's actually the true number.
Okay.
So I say that our numbers may go up this year because we're really ramping up, shoplifting, CopLogic. In fact, our domestic aggravated assault numbers are going to go up because we're doing any strangulation now. We're being encouraged to file it as a felony case. So now we're getting credit for aggravated assault. So our aggravated assault number is going to jump up this year. And that's when I talk about we need to average it over some time, because when we initiate something, we're proactive, aggressive about holding offenders accountable. It maybe drive our violent crime numbers up. But when in fact, nothing's really changed. We're holding people more accountable.
Okay.
So I hope that makes sense to you. It's not,
Yes.
every jurisdiction doesn't do it the same.
Yeah, it does, and I appreciate that. I'm just concerned about our image, and how are we going to educate the public about these numbers, because they will come out somehow, and it'd be nice to make sure that they understand really what's going on. So.
And I would tell you, even with NIBRS, what other jurisdictions, there can be some comparison, and I'm not going to tell you that our numbers are going to be necessarily higher than our surrounding jurisdictions either. I don't know that yet, because it's fairly new, and there isn't this comparison that's going on with other jurisdictions with NIBRS
Okay.
right now.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question, though, about these enhanced efforts could actually raise you add officers, you add ALPR, and the numbers are staggering in regard to the number of license plate hits you're going to get of stolen cars in our city as a result of the license plate readers. Councilmember Duclos.
We may get a staggering number, but I think if we start to put this out in the public, in the papers and online and everything, maybe people will stop and think about coming here in a stolen vehicle.
Exactly.
So our numbers may spike, but then they may start to drop, and they may go into other communities, may see their numbers go up.
That's the plan.
We're on the same wavelength then.
All right. Oh, was that my outside voice? Yeah, I'm sorry. All right.
Okay, so the second item is new 10 corporal rank structure. We're adding a corporal rank. Now, what we've done in the past within the police department is we had officer in charge program. Typically what that meant is generally experienced officers were selected to run a squad when the lieutenant was absent. When OIC was in charge, we would pay, out of class pay, 7% for them to fulfill that function. So we're just taking the OIC's Officer in Charge program. We did a selection process and identified 10 individuals. We promoted them to a corporal effective January 1. Assuming it's approved by the council here, but 10 positions, and we're paying them 5% of top officer pay. So there's even some savings because we're not going to no longer pay out of class pay for these OICs, but it's an annual cost of roughly $37,000, adding 5% for 10 people.
And Chief, to make sure we avoid any confusion, you mean these corporals start in effect this coming January 1?
That's correct.
For 15.
January 1, 2015.
All right. Okay.
And then I just think we've had a tremendous success with the Nick and Derrick projects. We're asking to continue to be funded. And also, we will seek grant funding from Washington State Traffic Safety Commission as well to augment our efforts. But we'd like to continue on with that, and we think that'll make our community safer. And then vehicle fleet, we're looking at 10 marked vehicles and 6 plain vehicle, but this is through our replacement funds. So there's already funding that exists for that, and it's just a normal cycle of vehicles that we do every year to replace the older vehicles. And then we talked about adding 3 new police vehicles, with us adding 5 officers. I think we need to add 3 vehicles to just keep it adequate staffing in terms of police vehicles. Okay, what we'd like to accomplish in 2015 and 16. We know that crime and quality of life issues is important to our citizens. It is to all of us, so we will continue to try to impact crime, mitigate crime in our community. That's one of our primary missions within the police department. We want to have high police presence. Citizens feel better or feel safer when they see police vehicles in downtown neighborhoods. We will continue to do that and try to impact vehicle prowls, burglaries, so forth in our community. We will continue. We can't do things alone. We can't live in a vacuum, so we will continue to collaborate and cooperate with other regional agencies to impact drugs, gangs, and human trafficking. And then enhance traffic safety by reducing vehicle speeds in neighborhoods and school zones. And we are looking at a program, volunteer program, where they will work neighborhood streets. We used to have this program years ago. We are looking at a program where we may use volunteers to help us reduce vehicle speed in neighborhood streets. They won't issue tickets or anything like that, but a warning letter to the registered owner that they were spotted speeding. So our traffic unit is looking at putting a program together there on that. And then again, 15 and 16, we talked about the Nick and Derrick project. And then registered sex offender verification program. Currently, we have about 185 registered sex offenders in our community, and we do receive grant funding for the verification program. We will continue to check on RSOs. And with level 3 sex offenders, we make contact with them on a quarterly basis, level 2 on a biannual, and level 1 offenders once a year. But we make contact, our detectives make contact with them. Continue our regional participation in patrol. That's our Regional Auto Theft Task Force. We currently have 47 safe city cameras. We've steadily increased the number of cameras, and we are looking to partner with Federal Way Public Schools. They received a grant funding to add cameras, and we're looking to tie into their system to have capability to look in schools and other cameras that they have. And one of the things, next bullet, one of the success for the police department is maintaining the public trust. And I can't tell you how important our CAPS unit is. They make 180, 200 community presentations and contact with citizens. A lot of things behind the scene, but they do have a tremendous impact in reducing crime and building that trust with the community. And they also speak at our Mayor's Neighborhood Connection meeting. And so they're constantly going to block watch meetings and so forth, inviting officers to attend as well, making that connection. So I think that's one of the reasons we have trusted the communities, that the police department's been successful for a number of years in our community, that we're enjoying that today. Next bullet, provide high level of in-house training to our people to respond to just about anything in our community, including acts of violence. We have really moved towards a reality-based training combining multiple disciplines. So you may have EVOC, emergency driving, defensive tactics, firearm, combination of everything, putting them in stressful environments and have them perform and maybe re-perform, and that's how you get better performing at stressful incidents. But we want to continue to provide the high level of training to our people. And the last thing that we'd like to accomplish is selection, integration of a new electronic timekeeping or schedule system for the police department. Right now, we're using clipboards and legal-size paper, hanging on a wall, and we want to make it so that supervisors from the field or at home or anywhere can access and maybe be able to see on a computer screen exactly what is a staffing number, instead of looking at 6 clipping boards to figure out how many you got. So that's one of the things we'd like to accomplish in 15 and 16, and we are all here now available to answer any questions that you might have.
And Chief, what's that a picture of?
This is our honor color guard. This is 3-member. This is from Officer Sean Smith Memorial Service, but I just thought it was just a cool picture. And they'll be participating in the November 11th flag ceremony, Veterans Day.
Council, I know that we were asking some questions during the presentation, but Councilmember Seppa-Dawson and Councilmember Maloney.
With the Nick and Derek initiative,
Yes.
the $25,000,
Yes.
is there an education component to that, or what is it for?
I would tell you that in that, well, there's always an educational component when you're out there making contact with citizens and taking enforcement action or even giving a warning. I would tell you in the police department, it's more of a systems approach. Traffic enforcement's always been important to us. So one of the things that if you receive a ticket in Federal Way, you're one of very few agencies that you can actually go to traffic school. So we offer a traffic school on a Saturday or 2 nights a week, either way, but we do offer traffic school. We've done that for a number of years, and I think it's a great way to educate our drivers. We also do, public service announcements, and we talk about traffic safety at the mayor connection meeting. But it isn't just happening with me. Throughout our whole organization, we got traffic officers going to high schools, talking to high school students. It's happening at every level. But I would tell you it's just a constant battle, because for most people, driving is something they take for granted. They don't see the danger in it, because we all do it. But we know that by far that's where people are going to get hurt the most. So it's a constant effort on part of the entire department.
You've been talking about this at our neighborhood connection meetings, and actually hearing you say that over and over has actually made me much more of a defensive driver, especially going through intersections and making sure I look, and so that's a real, very helpful, reminder for us all about the most dangerous thing we do every day is likely just driving to work or driving around town. So, Councilmember Maloney, or Councilmember Seppa-Dawson, were you done?
Good. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Maloney.
So I'm going to be a little Pollyanna-ish right now. I'm feeling a lot of pride right now because of all the work that you guys do, and it's not limited just to law enforcement, but it's all of the departments that have so far told us about their budgets and their accomplishments over the year. But really, I just have to take my hat off to you guys because you just do so much every day, and so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will add that when Chief Wilson left, he left the department healthy. I feel like we're just riding that wave, and I'll just add one more thing. I mean, this is really a very experienced command staff. When you look at other agencies in the law enforcement community, we know what's going on, and when departments are making radical changes and they got new command staff members, there's growing pains. It isn't, if you're not hearing about a lot of issues at the police department and so forth, it's because it's the leadership. It's a leadership within. And I will tell you this too, within 10 years, every one of us, exception a couple of people sitting here, will all be retired. So one of our things that we gotta do is we gotta bring people up so that this city continues to stay healthy.
Yeah, that's not really going to work for me. We're going to have to schedule that as a meeting. Brian, we'll have to have a conversation tomorrow.
I'm just letting you know, the reality is the reality. 10 years from now, it will all be changed. So we need to make sure that we continue to invest in our people and bring them up.
They grow up so fast. Councilor Honda.
Last night there was a combined meeting of the Federal Way Domestic Task Force, and the Federal Way Coalition Against Human Trafficking. And we had 3 officers there. We had our chief and our assistant chief and another officer who was on the panel. And I think they did a wonderful job of explaining and being there and being able to answer some questions that the public had. But one of the things you mentioned that I think is worth talking about is the training that you are now providing for your officers to recognize human trafficking victims. That was brought up last night.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a transformation going on in law enforcement. Just complete mind shift change that's occurring, and we have provided all training to our police officers on human trafficking. So I think that we will be able to rescue or help more people moving forward. That's because of that.
But thank you for being there last night and for being part of that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Burbidge.
Thank you very much. I would just like to underscore my colleagues' positive remarks, and with your presentation tonight, very thorough, and I'm very proud of our city in general, and but certainly our police department is a big part of that. It would be difficult to be proud of our city as a whole if we didn't have such a fine public safety department. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your support.
All right, council, any other questions or comments? All right, Chief, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And with that, I don't see, would there be any citizen comment? All right, in the absence of citizen comment, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.